the information about the other radiation bands in the light, let's call them black photons. Can we call them that? The radiation bands that are within the range of the black photons. We'll call them those, black photons. There's a chart for that, the different radiation readings. There is an extra sensor or a modification you can add to any radiation sensor, right? There's a modification. We'll show you how to make those if you want to. It's real cheap to make. Just a small modification. And it will begin to detect those black bands, the black photonic range of radiation bands. It's quite strange, different properties, but it certainly takes effect. In fact, they affect us more than normal radiation. It affects the world more than what can be seen. So as it turns out, the darkness, or those black photons in that band, that's what I'm calling them, black photons, they affect the world much, much more than the spectrum we can observe. No wonder they put all the information about the spectrum out there. Nobody cares. Test equipment that can measure within certain bandwidths and wavelengths. Nobody cares, you know. But when you start dipping over into the other realm, which takes a modification on your devices, well, then that changes the whole game. Because if you get near it yourself, there's a rock-solid reading from your body that never alters. In fact, you can take it to anybody, it never alters. And it only reads your body. Here's the funny thing. It will only read let's just say the black photons emissions from your body. Right? So if you set it for your body, it's only going to read that, not your phone, not your anything, not a fire. A fire will not make it respond or anything else, but your body will. Because your body carries that type of radiation. A living body does, not a body that is dead. If somebody is clinically dead, right, but their body is still warm, they do not carry certain radiation signatures anymore. So if you can see that, but I wouldn't speculate as to what it is because you don't know all the dynamics and properties of this, so I wouldn't speculate. But it is something you're not familiar with. In fact, there's a whole side of physics you're not familiar with. We're going to be starting classes, ladies and gentlemen. And we're going to start with, Patty said it, algebra. She just brought that up, but we're starting with algebra. Anybody who wants to learn algebra in one of these classes, you're free to do so in your own time. It really is easy to learn algebra. But it will change your way of thinking. Also, when you're learning these things, you're not assuming anymore, you're learning things. It is very imperative. Scientists and scientific enthusiasts often get caught up in facts, and it challenges their faith. Now, there's a balance with that, because once you begin to learn things, you realize that because there are no assumptions and everything is black and white, you begin to apply that to everything. You cannot apply that to your faith because you don't yet know all things of faith. You must destroy your flesh, or your flesh will feed you lies. The facts of this world have nothing to do with the truth of all things. It really doesn't. And that's very difficult to learn. But most people lose themselves when they're scientists. They want proof of the Bible, proof of Christ. The things don't make logical sense. And they find themselves challenged. And then they want to read something that does make logical sense. So you have to be very careful in that. Very, very careful. And as it turns out, as we go through this algebra class, because there are some kids that will be taking this too, we're also going to be going over some scriptures with the algebra. Right? The study materials for algebra will be put up as we go through it. I think you guys will enjoy it, find it simple. Some of you may want to rush to the last, but we're going to keep everybody on the same page and walk everybody through it so that you can really use it. Because algebra is a very useful tool. It really is a useful tool. Many people say, well, I don't need to use algebra. Sure you do. But you get frustrated when you can't. So that if you could, right, You wouldn't have such anxieties in public, in stores. When you're figuring out dinner and all these other things, your anxieties would go away. Small calculations can save you a world of trouble. Calm you down a little bit. You're no longer intimidated by numbers. Social behaviors change. That's a fact. Many things change. Because if you're intimidated by numbers or something you think you can't do, that's called a limitation. The Lord didn't put you here to have limitations, but to overcome all things. To be as wise as serpents, but harmless as doves. That is to say, not to learn all that is learnable, but to overcome your anxieties. And do you know how many people have anxieties about mathematics? They do. They have big anxieties. We're going to take that all away. You're free to take these courses, and you'll learn. It's quite easy. Quite thorough, quite easy. We do a lot of application. With each formula, we will apply it to many different situations in the world. That helps you see how it works. All right? Because if you're like me, it does no good for somebody to tell me you flip that switch and the light comes on. No, I need to know why it's coming on in the first place. So you'll get to find out what's behind the switch. And once you know that, you might be a little more gentle on your light switches, knowing that after so many switches, your light switch is going to wear out. If the light doesn't work, you're not going to worry about the switch. Go check the light bulb with the fuse, because now you can begin to see the truth of how things are working all over the place. So it really does open up your brain to get rid of anxieties. And when you know what anxieties and pressures, you know what that does to you? Makes you become desperate. That's what it does. You become desperate. You become mean and frustrated. If nothing gave you anxieties, if you could overcome all things, you'd be at peace. Because you can't. You're frustrated. That means when you latch on to something, you'll try to keep that thing as much as you can. And you'll fight to keep it. Well, if you have no anxieties, you walk in peace and you walk free. That comes by way of the word of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, and through him overcoming all things of this world, not to be intimidated by anything in this world. The majority of the body of Christ, really, internally, they're scared to death of so many things. They have social anxieties. They've been put down most of their lives. They like to stay alone and away from people because they feel they're not accepted, and it's become this type of behavior that they are hard-pressed to overcome, but they do defend it by way of attitude. Well, if you had peace and restoration back in your life, all those things would be gone. Then you could go where the Lord sends you without reservation. And ladies and gentlemen, that's called walking in truth. The truth is, you belong to the Lord. The truth is, through him you can overcome all things. The truth is, he's granted you life, an abundant life, overflowing life. The truth is, all of us can be redeemed. The truth is, we are afraid of our own flesh. What you fear the most, you found in yourselves. I'll give you an example of that. I used to have a few fears. I'm going to be personal with you about one fear. When dealing with spirits, I had a fear that I could be drawn in, being curious by them. I had that fear I could be drawn in. I had that fear since I was young. Right? You ever have one of those dreams that are groundbreaking, and it appeals to your sense of wonder instead of a sense of truth? It gave me fear. I feared I would step away from that desire of truth into that finding of wonder. I know it seems like a simple fear, right? And I had no idea I would be thrust into a world face to face with entities. There's so many things in that I had a fear of. But do you know why I had that fear? To have that sense of wonder by something that was strange to me. I don't want a sense of wonder by something that's strange to me. It's dangerous. I understood that as a child. But as it turns out, I fear the very thing I was prone to. If you're prone to something, then you're going to have a real fear for it. I'm not talking about somebody coming up and killing you. Because if you die and you belong to Christ, you go home, your race is finished. Not that type of fear. A fear of something that can draw you away. Some of you used to drink. Some of you still drink. And you have a fear that if you drink too much, you'll crave it again. Deeply crave it and be lost as you were. Some of you fear that if you had too much money, you'd lose your soul again. Collectively, you guys have fought off all types. Everything that could be in the flesh, you fought it off collectively. If all of us knew every story of each of us, we would have effectively overcome all things in this world. Because each one of you have a piece. You have overcome a piece of the darkness that resides in this world collectively. We have overcome all darkness. Individually, we have overcome pieces. Which means where Jeff has overcome things I have not. And if Jeff and I are walking side by side, because Jeff overcame it and I didn't, he can overcome that for me and then teach me about it. Now I have overcome what he has overcome, but only by him. And the Lord allowed him to overcome it. And he taught it to me. Now I won't be prone to it. And those things Jeff has not overcome, and I have. And Jeff and I are walking side by side. I can defend Jeff in that thing and then teach him about it. Now Jeff, without ever having gone through what I went through, has overcome what I had to viciously overcome. So we can each benefit from the story, from us being real with each other. Each of us can. And collectively, we have overcome just about everything. Why do you think Satan is so persistent in division? And again, he is allowed to do that. You don't think he's allowed to do that? Of course he's allowed to do that. He will test things in this world. God doesn't test us. Satan does all the time because he is darkness, evil. But he does his thing. Sometimes we act like God doesn't know Satan exists. Of course God knows. Who created Lucifer in the first place? Our Father in heaven did. Do you not know that the Father can undo everything he did? Why does Satan yet still live? God is not some angry individual, but all things he designed or purposed. Satan will test every aspect of everything God told you to get rid of. If he told you to die to your flesh daily, which was a warning, not a piece of advice, that was a warning. And if you continue to keep your flesh, then Satan is going to be your friend. And both of you will be in darkness. But you'll only be in darkness so far as you let your flesh live. If you've died to your flesh in that day, Satan can't do anything with you if you walk in spirit. We're going to learn that in the book of Acts. They walk these things out, and it's beautiful. And we're going to walk some things out. A few things out. Having said the information about the book of Acts and some of the classes we're going to have, you guys do realize we live in this is a very difficult time. Very difficult time. Lots of rumors are going to fly. Things are quickly going from threats to carnage. And the situation will begin to build. You live in that time, ladies and gentlemen. Time you were born to be in. None of this should be a surprise, nor should it scare you. But you're going to see developments that's going to give you a moment of pause. Remember one statement. The next war comes with an event in the heavens. Please remember that one. Now, I know that many people think they're ready to deal with the truth. Here's the problem. All those people who say, I am ready to deal with the truth, you ask them this, are they sad? Are they still missing something in their lives? Are they angry? Because listen, a person who's totally prepared is at peace. You ever think of that? The person who is totally prepared is at peace. How do you think they go to church in Egypt? With the threat of terrorism every single day of their lives, threats upon their homes. There were some gentlemen whose homes were burned up twice. Children wounded, and they still had peace. Americans are spoiled. We are spoiled. We will call on everybody we know and tell them a sob story. We have no strength when it comes to things like that, do we? How can those gentlemen still have peace and their families have peace? Even the child that was burned, that child has peace. And they still go to church. Even despite the bombing that just took place, guess what? They're still going to church. They have a Bible study set up for tomorrow night. Despite the bombing, and their friends did die. But they believe. And when you believe, you know this, that if a person dies for the sake of Jesus Christ, then they yet live. You see, we're the ones that are spoiled. Oh, it's such a bad thing. Simply because we can't see the truth. If you could see in the spiritual realm, when that church blew up and you saw it didn't affect the spirits of those people. And what if you saw Christ embrace them right there? You would desire to be blown up yourselves. Because you would want what they have. But I'm telling you that Americans, we walk by sight and not by faith. And we're blind as bats, constantly judging everybody. Now is one of those times to be careful, because if a brother judges another brother, you have to begin to question, is that truly a brother or not? Justified judgment is unjustified. Those who do so will be in misery. And they're going to fall for the beast. Misery comes because you're dissatisfied in the flesh. The spirit does not know misery. My goodness. Misery is a trait of the flesh. You want to know who's in the flesh for real? Look at their emotional overtones. Are they miserable? Then they're miserable in the flesh, not the spirit. Spirit knows no misery. It is sanctified from the beginning, sent by God. Sadness. Have you ever heard of a sad spirit? I thought we had the Spirit of the living God, which provides life all over this world, all throughout creation. His spirit of truth. His strong spirit. How can a spirit of strength have such sorrow? Are you kidding? That is flesh. When you read it in the Bible, when all faces gather blackness, the knees are weak and feeble and everything else, that is flesh that will become feeble. The flesh is going to die anyway, not the spirit. Absent your flesh, your spirit is free. That's why I keep telling you guys, forget about the flesh. It doesn't matter what I feel like. Doesn't matter what the condition of the body is. These things don't matter. That stuff is flesh. And guess what? What you speak, what does it come from? The spirit or the flesh? Because we all read that out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. Now we know that things that are in your brain, if you meditate upon them, you'll open a door, they enter into the heart. Right? So not taking captive your thoughts or what you contemplate in this life will enter into the heart, then you begin to speak about it. And you know what most Americans speak? Tantrum. They speak about tantrums, their own tantrums. They always speak about what they don't have, and they've never considered that their brothers in the Middle East and other places, they have nothing, but they have joy. We're spoiled, and we don't have joy. We have roofs over our heads. Those other people don't. They don't know where they're getting their next meal from, but they have joy. And then there's some who are so frightened in the middle. There we go. Okay, that was strange. Anyway, you guys, you don't want to know what happened on that one. There's a slider bar, right? Folks, listen to me. No kidding. There's a slider bar on my end, right? That slider bar went all the way down to infinity, the infinity symbol. Omega, right? Infinity. Went all the way down there, all by its lonesome. Are you kidding? Anyway, those things do take place. Who cares? Anyway, what I was saying was, we Americans are spoiled, complainers and judges of others. We are. Well, you have people in the Middle East who have no home. They're killing their own infants to save them from other folks, doing all these things, right? And they can sit with gunfire going off and they're praising the Lord. With riots going on and disagreements, with the devil literally stomping around them, they're still praising God. We hide away in fear. Because in America, you know what we have done? We think of ourselves the top of the church. Everybody who thinks of themselves the leaders of the church, first thing they do is start wearing some type uniform. No kidding. Some type fancy clothing. All that is for show. God doesn't see your fancy clothing. That they're trying to demonstrate to mankind their importance through their adornments. We've lost our minds, and it's time for us to get back to the truth. All that stuff is for flesh. God is spirit, and it's written, God is spirit, therefore we must worship him in spirit and in truth. How can one commune with the Father if they're in flesh? If you don't die to your spirit every single day of your life, today did you die to your flesh? What's making your decisions? Is it by what you see with your eyes or spiritually? See, that's what dying to flesh is. Are you making decisions based upon what you can see, or is it based on the Spirit? And this is why people are not going to know what to do here shortly. And men's hearts are going to fail them for fear, for looking after those things which are coming upon the earth. Because they trusted in what they saw, but they saw nothing. You can look out into the world right now. You're not seeing anything. You're not seeing what exists spiritually. So that when the spiritual realm manifests, when all things are shouted from the rooftop, yes, when the manifestation takes place, your hearts will fail you and some of the others too. Not all people. Some of you are getting a glimpse into the spiritual realm. Some of you will. And it's going to scare the peanuts out of your M&Ms. But don't worry, that's your flesh, not your spirit. Your flesh will freeze in the presence of certain things. Playtime should be far over. You should never worry about scoffers and mockers and all such folks. But be warned. but the mouth of a saint who judges others. You be warned, I tell you, that person does not carry the gospel. They're judging prematurely. They have dipped into self-protectionisms and everything else. That is not the gospel of Jesus Christ. Despite the condition of mankind, Jesus died for them. And if Jesus died for them, who is anyone to undo what Jesus did? Did Jesus remove that person from the earth yet? Because he has the keys of hell and death. If that person still yet lives, then guess what? How do you know that person does not still have an opportunity? And in the day of the Lord, in those certain days, men will call on the name of the Lord and they shall be saved. The Lord will turn and hear them. I'm trying to warn you, because if you don't stop, your life will become judgment. And not one soul on this earth will be able to help you, because that judgment will come from the Father himself upon your life. You refuse to be merciful, so shall your Lord refuse to be merciful to you. Do you not know that when you are condemning like that to another, you have led them effectively into captivity? Those who lead into captivity must they themselves go into captivity. Ladies and gentlemen, the gospel is still here. Be mindful. Watch the mouth of those who judge the brothers. God has deemed fit for them to live another day. Who is anyone on this earth to condemn them? The gospel is the good news. This is a business of saving the soul, not saving the flesh. Your flesh is kaput. It is finished. Stop trying to save it. Open your eyes and your ears, because those who condemn a brother, despite that brother's condition, those who condemn that brother, I will condemn the deeds of someone. I will hate the sin in someone and say, brother, you don't do that. You're going to kill yourself. But I will never, ever condemn a person. Not ever. I'll walk away from the dark activities that they do. I will have no part in that. But I will never condemn them, because my Father didn't condemn them. And if we have the mind of Christ, then our mind to them is love only. It's about truth. It's about the good news still, despite their sins and their activities. So you be wary and watchful of the tongue that condemns, because they're using Scripture to condemn people. That person's name will be misery itself. That keeps surfacing in my spirit.